Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
We talk about two different things today in two different places. One is crony capitalism, that is in China, and there we pick up the thread from episode 649, where we talked about how Xi Jinping had cut Jack Ma into size, and we also listed the three attributes of Xinomics, or Xi's view of state-controlled capitalism. The second is about politics, and it's about, in fact, municipal politics. And why do we talk about municipal politics, and that too in a state which is by far not India's largest state, or not even among its largest states. If anything, it's among India's smaller states. In a mere municipal election, and that too not in the big municipalities of the state, but in the smaller municipalities. The reason we do that is because that state is called Punjab. And today the context is very relevant because of farmers' agitation and also because of the separatist noises and forces which are rising elsewhere. There is a special concern and focus on Punjab. So before I get into the more cluttered thing from China, the story of crony capitalism from China, let me talk about Punjab, and I will take only 3 minutes doing that. What's happened in Punjab today is results are still coming in. So by the time you see this, all the results would not be in. But you will see that in city after city after city, the big cities are not involved right now, but in medium-sized cities or urbanizing cities, we see a stunning result, and stunning in the sense that you see almost Congress clean sweep to the extent that in many of the municipal corporations and councils, Congress is winning up to 90% or 90% plus seats, like say 19 out of 20 or 9 out of 10. Now this is something quite remarkable in Punjab, particularly given the fact that right now the population is quite, I would say, quite agitated over the farmers' protests and over the farm bills. What has also happened in Punjab is that the second largest party traditionally in Punjab, or maybe even the party that alternates in power with the Congress, that's Akali Dal. Akali Dal is doing very badly, very badly. In most places, it's like between 1/5 to even 1/10 of the Congress party. And yet it can draw some comfort from the fact that it is doing better than the other two there, that is the BJP and Aam Aadmi Party, both of which are getting wiped out. So what does it tell us? We don't have to worry about the larger picture, who controls the council, say in Gidarbaha or Mansa or any of those places, which may not mean very much to most people across the country, barring those who are from Punjab or who know Punjab. But what this tells you is that this farmers' agitation is already beginning to have a big impact on the politics of Punjab. And that is what lies underneath this clutter. It's a very important message because Punjab is only a year away from its assembly election. Normally, you would think that by the time a government finishes 4 years and is in its election year, anti-incumbency sets in. That has not happened in Punjab. If these municipal results are any indication, these are from small towns. So small towns also have a lot of sort of urban or part rural, part urban voters. It also has other indications. For example, the few areas which were BJP strongholds. For example, in Gurdaspur Lok Sabha constituency. Now there are regions, the municipal corporations and councils within Gurdaspur Lok Sabha constituency. There is Pathankot, there is Sujanpur, there is Dinanagar, the border town. All three, the BJP has been thrashed in these places. So this is a seat that BJP held in Parliament, Sunny Deol's seat. Also Hoshiarpur, Som Prakash of the BJP was Minister of State. He won that seat in Lok Sabha. It's a reserved seat. Hoshiarpur also, BJP has been wiped out. So this is telling us a few things. One, it's telling us that because Punjab has a very interesting and very finely balanced demographic situation. Sikhs are the majority, but Hindus are also in sizable numbers. Now these Hindus, who are 40+% of Punjab's population, they tend to live more or concentrate more in the cities or semi-urban areas, which means the Hindus who used to be the BJP's core vote are now voting the Congress because they are afraid both of AAP because AAP is seen to be a very Sikh friendly, or in fact it's a reputation they have not been able to shake off, a radical Sikh friendly party. They've tried to shake it off but they've not been able to. And second, they don't trust the Akali Dal. Second point that comes out is that the advantage that the Akali Dal had with its partnership with the BJP, or both had in that partnership, this was the perfect symbiotic partnership, that is now become a disadvantage because they've broken up. So it's a lesson to both of them that breaking up like this is a disaster for both of them. And third, you can also see that there is anger among the farmers, especially the Sikhs. And at this point, they are not willing to vote for the Akali Dal for the simple reason that they see Akali Dal as having been partners of the BJP for a long time, and they don't yet see sufficient distance between the Akali Dal and the BJP. So they would either vote for Aam Aadmi Party, some of them, or they'd rather go to the Congress or the local candidate, whoever they prefer. So that is what you are now seeing in Punjab 1 year before state elections. So you can see that BJP is the biggest loser, Aam Aadmi Party is the second biggest loser, Akali Dal is the third biggest loser, but they are all big losers by a lot. They really count for nothing. And Congress should be smiling at this point, which has two further lessons coming out of it. One, that the only political party that has leverage in Punjab now, also with the farmers, is the Congress party. So if Modi government does want to resolve this problem, they have to work with the Congress government there. And second, it's a lesson also for Rahul Gandhi that this is the only state in the country where he has a chief minister who is fully in control. And if he has leverage, he is powerful, then he should make use of that instead of wasting it away or frittering it away. Because in politics, particularly when you're down in the dumps or you have your back to the wall or you've been decimated, you cling to the little leverage that you have. It is very important. The third point that arises from this is, as we have said to you before, the BJP doesn't particularly care about Punjab because they know they've never won Punjab and it's unlikely that they will win Punjab by themselves. So until a situation where they can have an ally in Punjab who gets a Sikh vote, it can be Akali Dal again, can it be Aam Aadmi Party? I don't know. Obviously it can't be Congress. Until that happens, their stakes in Punjab in terms of their own political power there are limited. But their stakes nationally are higher because Punjab is a very sensitive state. That's why we even talk of a tiny municipal election in Punjab. The second thing the BJP has already displayed, that while they are not so worried electorally about Punjab because they tend to look at everything electorally, like it or not, they are very worried on the other hand about the rising anger among the Jats, Hindu Jats of Haryana, Western UP and Rajasthan. And no surprises that Rahul Gandhi has also been going to Rajasthan, to Nagaur, which is a Jat Garh in Rajasthan, and holding his tractor rallies, etc. there. So BJP has now sounded an alarm. There are 40 seats around Delhi in Rajasthan, Western UP and Haryana, where Jats count for a large number of votes and influence. And you can see the BJP is now reaching out. Please see the story that we have carried. I'm sharing a link with you that BJP is now sending its leader to meet the Jat Khaps to try and make peace with them. Also, that BJP's Jat ministers, particularly Sanjeev Balyan, who is from the same Khap as Tiketh and who won the Lok Sabha seat from Muzaffarnagar, he is now talking to representatives of these unions from Haryana and Western UP. So that is how the political situation is opening out or being influenced as a result of the farmers' agitation from Punjab to Haryana to Western UP to Rajasthan. Now we turn to the story of crony capitalism in China, and this is so cluttered that even I have to be careful not to get into so much detail. So let me do something that my botany teacher in college used to do, because before he would start telling you about something, he would list all the characters or all the features, and usually he would draw a diagram also. Old economy teaching, you know, no computers. So you knew what are the names and what are the things that we are talking about. So let me use that method now and list a few names for you, Chinese names. So one name is, of course, Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba and also the Ant Group, whose IPO was stopped by Xi Jinping just on the eve of its opening. We talked about that in episode 649, as I mentioned. So there is Jack Ma, there is Xi Jinping. These are the two big characters. Then there are some interesting characters who are key to this story. That is Jiang Zicheng. Jiang Zicheng owns the Boyu Capital. That's the company, Boyu Capital. Jiang Zicheng happens to be the grandson of Jiang Zemin, the former one of the predecessors of Xi Jinping. Then there is Li Botan. Li Botan is the owner of Beijing Zhaod Investment Group. He is the son-in-law of Jia Qinglin. Jia Qinglin is a former Politburo member who was also a member of the Standing Committee of the Politburo, so very high and very close, considered very close to Jiang Zemin. Then there is Huang Rongping. Huang Rongping runs a company called Beijing Zhongkan. She is the wife of Xiao Feng, who is the king of Chinese mutual funds industry. So a big money maker in China. Then there is also a woman called Wang Shaoxing. Wang Shaoxing is also a real estate tycoon, and she hasn't made as much money in real estate as in borrowing from what is called as peer-to-peer borrowing, one company lending to another. A company raises money or deposits from chota people, families, and then gets a lot of money, then lends it to another company. Sounds familiar? Island FS, and there are many other Ponzi scheme companies in India. So she made her money like that. So a lot of the common people got ruined, but she made her money like that. So these are key names. And finally, the most important name for today, which has enabled us to talk about this, or which has enabled us to declutter this story, that is Lingling Wei. Now, Lingling Wei is a brilliant correspondent on Chinese affairs for Wall Street Journal. She has written this story in the Wall Street Journal that came out late last night, and I read it in fascination. That tells you that the reason Xi Jinping went after Jack Ma was not just ego, there was politics in it, because politics, whether you are a dictatorship or you are a democracy, you are a flawed democracy, you are a flawed dictatorship, as I call Pakistan, or if you are a pakka communist state which also wants its own capitalism. Politics lies behind everything, and behind politics lie deep insecurities, and that gives rise to crony capitalism as well, because anybody who's friendly to you is okay. Anybody who's not friendly to you, or anybody who has the money from somebody who might not be friendly to you or might be a threat someday, is somebody who needs to be squashed. So that is what lies behind this story. So what Lingling Wei, and Lingling Wei, in fact, she's also the author of a very important book, Superpower Showdown, that came out last year. She wrote this in partnership with Bob Davis. They are co-authors of it. So please check it out. What she has said is that Chinese central government institutions were already investigating Jack Ma's companies, especially the Ant Group, way before he proposed an IPO, because they suspected that a lot of his investors and a lot of his partners and friends were actually people who in the Chinese political culture are now described as princelings. Princelings are sons, daughters, sons-in-law, daughters-in-law, grandchildren of the former bosses of Chinese Communist Party who made a lot of money, because when you have power, you have money. There is no such thing that so and so is a communist leader, is all powerful, but it's absolutely non-corrupt. There might be the odd one, but then there will be enough around him or her that will be as corrupt as people in any other system. That is what happened in China as well. So those communist dynasties produce these princelings. Lingling Wei story says that Xi Jinping was concerned that a lot of these princelings who came from families who were a threat to him, particularly Jiang Zemin's family, because he has sidelined many of those families, especially Jiang Zemin's family. They will get a lot of money. They will all get billions of dollars like this with this IPO, and they will become a threat to him. It's a bit sobering for me to think that I can unravel this spaghetti bowl or noodle bowl or chow mein bowl, whatever you want to call it. This is a very complicated story, and I do it with the help of Ling Ling Wei's Wall Street Journal story. So thank you very much. Eternally grateful to you. Also, great graphics in this story. What this says is that Jack Ma owns a large shareholding in the Ant Group through two companies. These are Hangzhou Junhao and Hangzhou Junhan. Besides that, he also owns 5% in Alibaba, which owns 32.7% in Ant Group. So, indirectly also, he has more shareholding in Ant Group. Now, together, he with his three friends have set up a company called Hangzhou Yunbo. Hangzhou Yunbo has Jack Ma with 34%, Simon Hu, Fang Jiang and Eric Jing with 22% each. That is how this company is constituted. That comes to almost about 100%. Then this company is a general partner of the two companies we had mentioned earlier, that is Hangzhou Junhao and Hangzhou Junan. These companies own 50.5% of Ant Group. These own 50.5% of Ant Group. Alibaba owns 32.7% of Ant Group, as we just told you, and then the rest of the people own 16.8% of Ant Group. Now, 16.8% of Ant Group is not small change. If it was going to be a 300 billion IPO, you can imagine how much is that worth and how much money people owning that equity would have made. Now, who are these people who own into these equities? That is the others group, etc. So, there is Jiang Zemin's grandson, Jiang Jicheng, who I told you set up the Boyu Capital. Boyu Capital, through three other companies, owns a bunch of equity in Ant. Then there is Li Botan, the son-in-law of Jia Qinglin, the former member of the Politburo Standing Committee, who we mentioned to you owns Beijing Jiaode Investment Group, who through three other subsidiaries or other companies also owns a bunch of equity in Ant. And then there are Huang Rongping and Ms. Wang Xiaosheng. One is the wife of a big mutual funds king in China, and the other is a big real estate czar who made money borrowing from people who did not return to those who had lent money to them. So, people who were running a kind of Ponzi scheme. So, these people had invested in the Ant Group. These were all seen to be close friends of Jack Ma. They were also seen to be close to what is called as the Shanghai faction. Now, Shanghai faction is the old name. In fact, if you go to Beijing, you can hear this all the time, or if you watch China, you hear this all the time, that Shanghai faction is the name chosen for people, for the elites that arose in the wake of Jiang Zemin. So, these are still people who are considered close to Jiang Zemin, and although Xi Jinping has destroyed their power to quite an extent, but some of it still exists. It hasn't disappeared. If anything, the Shanghai faction or the Jiang Zemin group still has more influence than many other groups in Chinese Communist Party, and that tells you why Xi Jinping might have particularly seen the need to go into it. Now, Jiang Zemin's grandson and Jack Ma have been friends for a long time. In 2012, the story tells us that Jiang had helped Jack Ma buy Yahoo stake in Alibaba. That stake came up to about 5% of Alibaba. $7.1 billion were required to buy that stake because Alibaba had become a very big company. Remember, even Masayoshi Son, the Japanese big investor, mega investor, the owner of SoftBank, he made his big money by investing just $20 million into Alibaba. In fact, after that, there was a quote of his where he said that I felt that we were the same animal. I could smell it, that he will make money. So, Jiang helped Jack Ma buy back this 5% in Alibaba. This money was raised through a consortium which included Jiang's Boyu Capital, also China Investment Corporation, and some other official or state institutions. When the shares were listed 2 years later, this purchase of 5% equity in Alibaba became worth a hell of a lot. So they all became rich. So these were seen to be fellow travelers, partners of Jack Ma for a long time. And then that made Xi Jinping insecure, who obviously thought that these guys were all getting together. They will all become so much richer. This will make Jack Ma, he was already a larger than life figure, an even bigger figure, and they could be a challenge to me. So that is what led to this. There are two sides to crony capitalism. One is when you are helping your cronies grow. But the flip side of the same crony capitalism is when you block the growth of those you don't like or you don't see as friends. So both are crony capitalism. So it is this kind of the other side, other kind of crony capitalism that could have led to, or looks like did lead to, Xi Jinping going after Jack Ma and the Ant Group IPO. Of course, there are regulatory issues that Ant Group was doing the job of a bank without carrying a bank's liabilities, but those are matters of detail.